Crush Climbing asks, what's the most scared you've ever been and why? Well, it took me to become a father to discover that fear for yourself in climbing is not actually all that scary. Being scared for someone else that you care about is far, far more scary. So the most scared I've ever been by an order of magnitude was when my daughter fell out of her pram and fell down a set of stairs when she was 1 or 2, but the next morning she was absolutely fine and no lasting damage. Actually, if I think about it directly, I still get quite upset. So that's such as the lasting scar that it leaves on my mind, despite the fact that there was actually no long-term consequences. But since this vlog is about climbing, I'll tell you about the most scared I've ever been in climbing. And that moment was right here where I'm stood just now. As I say, we're on Binny and Shoes. 2 years ago I had a project up in the fortress here, which was going to be a really cool E8. I'd cleaned it, I'd done the moves, I'd linked it on the top rope, I just needed to lead it. But the weather was awful, and we went through July, August, and we just couldn't seem to get a spell where the route was dry. And I was going climbing a lot with my friend Masa Sukarno, who lives just along the road in Newton Moor, and for several days in a row we arranged to climb. And then we woke up that morning and the rain was falling. It was worse than the forecast, and so we cancelled. And then there was one morning where we did the same, woke up in the morning, realised it was raining, cancelled our arrangement to meet. But then Masa texted me again and said, I'm free all day, I'm just working at home. If the weather clears up a bit later on, let's revisit it. So at 1 PM, it looked a fair bit brighter. So we met up, we walked up to Binny and Shoes, and we went climbing. I must admit that, this is easy to say with hindsight, but when I was up there I had that feeling of desperation where it's like, I'm clutching at straws here trying to do this. The route's still got drips that are only just missing the holes. I'm trying to dry them with a towel. It's raining all around us, a bit like it is today. And it could rain at any moment. I'm probably not going to get this done. What am I doing here? But again, I thought, well, I've been here many times before in this situation, and sometimes you just get the route sent. Masa tried one of the other routes nearby, an E3. He actually took a fall and lowered down, and then said, right, you go for it, you try your route. And so I started up it. And the first 5 meters off the ground, you start just walking up a very easy angled slab, and then you pull onto the undercut start. There's not really any gear for the first meter or two. And I was just pulling through that roof, I just reached for an undercut overhead. I was holding a big side pull pinch with my right hand, and it broke off. The next moment I was flying backwards. I was only just above head height above the ground, I wasn't far, but I shot backwards, so I got a bit of distance down the slab. I landed hard on the slab on my heel, broke my leg, and somersaulted back through the heather. I stood up and I was in a state of a bit surprise and I guess shock, because at first I didn't feel any pain at all, and I actually almost felt really angry that it's like, I just got so psyched and started up the route and I'm back on the ground again, like what's going on? Like that was ridiculous. Then I started to feel, I didn't feel that good on that foot. And Masa said, are you okay? And I said, I think so. And then I took a step and I thought, maybe I'm not, maybe there's something up with my ankle. But I could still actually stand on it and walk around a bit. My leg wasn't completely smashed to bits, it was just cracked right down the middle of my tibia, so it was a closed fracture. So that's why I could still weight it. But within about 3 or 4 minutes, I had to take my rock shoe off and I realised that I would not be starting up the route again, and that this was now an operation to get off the hill. And by the time that got to 10 minutes, I was really in quite a lot of pain and I wanted to get down. So I started to think very practically, right, we have to do this as fast as possible. I'm an hour's walk up the hill, and then it's half an hour cycle to get where I'm standing right now from the road, and we had to cycle back, so I thought this is going to be challenging. I was lucky that I had poles with me. That's how you can walk off a mountain with a broken leg. If I didn't have poles with me, then I would have had to crawl. So I said to Masa, right, now the other part to this story is that my static rope that I'd used to clean the route with was still hanging from the top of the route. I'd swung it off to the side, and so that needed to be retrieved. So I said to Masa, right, could you go to the top of the crag, retrieve the static rope, and I'll start walking down and you'll no doubt catch me up very quickly. So I put on my rucksack and started hobbling down with my poles, basically just hopping and pole vaulting my poles. And Masa went to the top of the crag. He hadn't actually been to the top before, and so I explained that there was two ways to get to the top. You could either walk away around to the top of the mountain and scramble down all the terraces to get to the terrace at the top of the crag where the rope was belayed to, or you could solo a V-diff. It's quite a steep V-diff up this gully, which is a lot quicker, but obviously is a bit of soloing. And so I said, just you decide, and I sort of got going. And as I was hobbling down the path, I turned round once and saw Masa just starting up the V-diff solo. As it was starting to get dark, I arrived at the loch side here where we'd parked our bikes. And I sat down, took my boot off, I put my foot in the loch, and I started to feel sorry for myself. I thought, oh no, I've broken my ankle, broken my leg, something's really bad here, and I'm going to be out of climbing. I'd already just had 3 ankle surgeries on that same ankle, and I spent more than a year on crutches since 2012, and I thought, oh God, I've done this to myself again. This is awful. But then as the minutes turned to tens of minutes, turned to an hour, and there was no sign of Masa, I started to not be concerned about myself and more concerned about Masa. Where is he? And I had this horrible feeling in the back of my stomach that, well, he was last seen soloing to the top of the crag. How could he possibly be delayed? The only way he could be delayed is if he's taken a fall, and if he's taken a fall from near or at the top of the crag, then the consequences are going to be as bad as they can get. So I felt my heart rate start to rise and anxiety, and it just felt absolutely awful. And I actually hobbled round the head of the loch to where I'm standing now so I could get a view back to the crag. And I was squinting through the half light trying to see if I could see him. I couldn't see him anywhere, and I just got more and more worried. And I was holding my phone like with my finger like that, ready to dial for the mountain rescue. And I thought, I want to leave this to the last minute because he might just appear and everything, you know, people get delayed coming off hills, it happens. You don't know what kind of faffs can happen, and they come off fine. So when I've not seen that there's an accident, I don't want to call the mountain rescue, but I'm incapable of walking back up, although I did contemplate it, of walking back up to try and find him. The interesting thing was that the pain from my leg just really disappeared as I stood there. It was sore if I tried to walk on it, but I was so anxious that he would have fallen and died. And Masa finally appeared out of the darkness, looking totally dishevelled with ropes hanging everywhere, his helmet half off his head. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, Masa, are you okay? And he went, kind of. So it turned out what had happened was he'd soloed up the V-diff right to the top, the last few moves. He'd stood in a wet turf and it had just given way, and he just fell off. And he fell all the way down this vertical gully, bouncing off the sides. I have no idea how he survived. He just said that every time he landed on a ledge or on the side of the gully, it was on his rucksack, which had 2 half ropes in it. He fell to the bottom, lay there for about half an hour, picked himself up, checked that he wasn't in bits and injured, and seemed to be fine, and then gradually walked off. Obviously I was kind of in disbelief that was even possible, but here he was standing beside me. I thought, is the pain of me having broken a limb like making me hallucinate? It was a really surreal experience. We got on with what we still had to do, which was cycle back to the road down this track. I found that it was surprisingly difficult to get going on a bike with a broken leg. You need one foot to push to get started and one foot to pedal. So we were like a pair of old men, like trying to hobble onto our bikes and get going. But once we got going, at least it was downhill back to the car. And when we arrived back at the cars, we both got into our separate cars and said, see you later, and went off home. We both independently went to hospital. Masa got checked out. He had staved his thumb a little bit and was very bruised and sore. I think he stayed in bed for about 4 days, but then he was fine. I'd broken my leg. I was on crutches for, I think, about 10 weeks. And it took me about 6 months to get back to feeling really fit and strong again. In fact, I went back to finish that E8 the following spring. So that's the most scared I've ever been. I now feel that both through being a father and both being scared for climbing partners in various situations in the hills, that being scared for yourself is not really that scary. Okay, so speaking of scary things, I have the question from Callum McBain. Callum is a climbing coach, and so it's always interesting to get good climbing coaching questions. So Callum's question is, would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses?